Biology class, Fatima Convent High School, Chapter 14, Sources of Energy, Class 10. We begin with the sessions of Chapter 14. Now we know that energy is the capacity to do work. Now, where does this energy come from? Or what are the sources of this energy which we use every day, every time for various activities in our life? We understood in certain chapters related to life processes where we talked about how our body gets energy from the nutrients and how the food is broken down into simpler form to release energy stored in it. But in this chapter, we are going to talk about environmental energy. That is energy we get from environment or the various sources of energy which we will be utilizing for various activities on a large scale. So let us move further into the chapter. In class 9, we have learned that the total energy during physical or chemical process is conserved. This is law of conservation of energy. That is, why then do we hear so much about energy crisis? If energy can neither be created nor be destroyed, so energy is always present in the same amount in the universe. It can neither be created nor be destroyed. It just changes from one form to another. Then why we have energy crisis? Why we should have no worries if it is endless source of energy. We should be able to perform endless activities without thinking about energy resources. Then why do we think of conserving the energy? This riddle can be solved if we recall what else we learned about energy. Energy comes from different forms and one form can be converted to another form. During this conversion, some energy gets converted into such a form which cannot be utilized again. And so that energy, which is not a resource anymore, creates the energy crisis. So for example, if we drop a plate from a height, the potential energy of the plate is converted mostly to sound energy which is hitting the ground. If we light a candle, the process is highly exothermic and so the chemical energy in the wax is converted to heat and light on burn. What other products are obtained when we burn a candle? Obviously, we have the hydrocarbons. The total energy during a physical or a chemical process remains same, but suppose we consider the burning candle again. We can somehow put together the heat and light generated along with the product of the reaction to get back the chemical energy in the form of wax? No, we will not be able to get all the energy back which we used. And so let us consider another example. Suppose we take 100 ml of water which has a temperature of 348 Kelvin or 75 degrees Celsius and leave it in a room where the temperature of 298 Kelvin 25 degrees Celsius. What will happen? Is there any way of collecting all the heat lost to the environment and making the water hot once it has cooled down without using any external source? So in any example that we considered, we see that energy is usable form is dissipated to surrounding in less usable form, and hence the source of energy we use to do work is consumed and cannot be used again. So we experience the energy crisis every now and then. Now, what are the good sources of energy? What criteria should a source of energy have to be easily usable to us and give us more output. What can then be considered a good source of energy? We in our daily life use energy from various sources for doing work. We use diesel to run our trains. We use energy to light our street lamps, or we use energy in our muscles to cycle to the school. List 4 forms of energy that we use from morning when you wake up till you reach the school. From where do we get these different forms of energy? Can we call this source of energy? What and why? Now, the muscular energy for carrying out physical work, electrical energy for running various appliances, chemical energy for cooking food and for running a vehicle all comes from some source. We need to know how to select the source needed for obtaining the energy in its usable form. So consider the various options we have used to we choose a fuel for cooking our food. We cannot use petrol for cooking food, or we cannot use even diesel for cooking food. Same way we cannot use the wood for running a car. So each energy source has its special use according to the technology. What are the criteria you would consider when trying to categorize everything as a good fuel? What would you choose be different if you lived in a forest, in a remote mountain village, or a small island in New Delhi? Lived few centuries ago, how are the factors different in each case? So, we can easily tell according to this that the criteria to good energy fuel or the criteria to categorize good fuel for cooking our food are as follows. It should be easily available, it should be economical, it should be economical, it should not produce smoke or ash, and it should have high efficiency. So these are the criteria. Now if we are living in a forest, we would use wood and dry leaves. If we are living in a remote mountain, we would use wood and dry leaf. In a village, cow dung cakes. In Delhi or a big city, we can use LPG or PNG. Lived few centuries ago, then wood was the main source of energy. And the factors are different on the basis of its availability. It depends where we are and how we need the energy. After going through the two activities above, we can see that particular sources of energy or fuel we select for performing some work depends on many different factors. For example, we select a fuel, we should ask ourselves the following question. How much heat does it release on burning? Does it produce a lot of smoke? Is it easily available? Can you think of 3 more relevant questions to ask about a fuel? Give the range of. So, if we had to select, then we would think how much heat does it release on burning? Does it produce a lot of smoke? Is it easily available? What are the factors which should limit our choice, and what would the fuel selected also depend on the work to be done? And would we choose one fuel for cooking and another for heating the room in winter? So this is the way how you can put the criterias. And would the fuel selected also depend on work to be done? For example, would we choose one fuel for cooking and other for heating the room in winter? We would then say that a good source of energy would be one which would be a large amount of work per unit volume or mass. This is the important criteria for a good quality fuel. Be easily accessible, be easy to store and transport, and perhaps most importantly, be economical. So, this is what a good fuel can be. Now, let us see the conventional sources of energy. Fossil fuel. What is the meaning of word fossil? Fossil is the dead remains of plants and animals which were formed years ago and they were buried into the soil and get converted into pure carbon form due to pressure and heat of the earth's crust. Now there are two kinds of fossil fuels. Very familiar with these words, you know they are coal and petroleum. Coal and petroleum. In ancient days, wood was most common source of heat energy and the energy of flowing water and wind was also used for limited activities. Can you think of some of these uses? The exploitation of coal as a source of energy made the Industrial Revolution possible. Increasing industrialization has led to a better quality of life all over the world. It has also caused a global demand for energy to grow at a tremendous rate. The growing demand for energy was largely met by the fossil fuels, coal and petroleum. Our technologies were also developed for using these energy sources, but these fuels are formed over millions of years ago and they are only limited reserves. The fossil fuels are non-renewable sources of energy and so we need to conserve them. Otherwise they will soon get over and we will be failing in utilizing any of the technologies which we are using today which runs on the basis of coal and petroleum. If we were to continue consuming this source at such alarming rate, we would soon run out of the energy. In order to avoid this, alternate sources of energy were explored, but we continue to be largely dependent on fossil fuel for most of our energy requirement. Here is a pie chart showing the major sources of energy for our requirement in India. So the maximum used fuel is coal, second highest is petroleum and natural gas, then water, nuclear energy and lastly the wind energy. So you can see that coal is the highest used fuel and petroleum as well. So if we don't replace it by other renewable sources, soon it will get over. Burning fossil fuel also has another disadvantage. We have learned in class 9th about the air pollution caused by burning of coal or petroleum product. The oxides of carbon, nitrogen and sulfur are released on burning of fuel and they are acidic oxides because they are non-metals. This leads to acid rain which affects our water and soil resources. We know that acid rain is harmful to plants, animals and the skin of the animals even get burned due to acid rain. This, in addition to the problem of air pollution, recall the greenhouse effect of gases like carbon dioxide. So these are the disadvantages of using the fossil fuels and so we strictly need to find an alternative source. How would our lives change if we would no longer get electric supply? The availability of electric energy to each individual in our country is one of the parameters to measure the growth of our country. The pollution caused by burning of fossil fuel can be somewhat reduced by increasing the efficiency of combustion process and using various techniques to reduce the escape of harmful gases and ash into the surrounding. Besides being used directly for various purposes in gas and vehicle, do you know fossil fuels are major fuels used for generating electricity? Let us produce some electricity at our own small plant in class and see what goes into producing our favorite form of energy. Take a table tennis ball and put 3 slits in it. Put semicircular fins cut out of metal sheets into the slits. Pivot the tennis ball on an axle through its center with a straight metal wire fixed to a rigid support. Ensure that the tennis ball rotates freely about the axis. Now connect a cycle dynamo to it. Connect a bulb in the series. Direct a jet of water or stream through produced in a pressure cooker at the fins. You will see that the fan formed from the tennis ball will rotate, and this rotation will cause the dynamo to function, and this dynamo will light the bulb. So we actually generated electricity. So this is a turbine for generating electricity, and the simplest turbine have one moving part, a rotor blade assembly. The moving fluid acts on the blades to spin them and impart energy to the rotor. Thus, we see that basically we need to move the fan, the rotor blade with speed, which would turn the shaft of dynamo and convert mechanical energy into electrical energy. The form of energy which has become a necessity in today's scenario. The various ways in which it can be done depends upon the availability of the resources. You will see how various sources of energy can be harnessed to run the turbine and generate electricity in the following section. So, we replaced the coal which was used in heating the water into changing it into another forms like thermal energy, hydro energy, wind energy, nuclear energy, etc. Electricity is the energy which is produced by various methods, but we have to opt for the advantages and disadvantages of each of these sources of energy. Now let us see the thermal power plant. The thermal power plant is when the turbine is rotated with the help of steam, and this steam is produced by heating wood or coal to heat the water, and large amount of fossil fuels are burned every day in power stations to heat up water to produce steam, which further runs the turbine to generate electricity, and the transmission of electricity is more efficient than transporting coal or petroleum over the same distance. Therefore, many thermal power plants are set up near coal or oil fields. The term thermal power plant is used since fuel is burned to produce heat energy, which is converted into electric energy. Now let us see hydropower plant. Another additional source of energy was the kinetic energy of flowing water or the potential energy of water at a height. Hydropower plant convert the potential energy of falling water into electricity. Since there are very few waterfalls which could be used as a source of potential energy, hydropower plants are associated with dams. In this last century, A large number of dams were built all over the world. As we can see from, a quarter of our energy is required in India is met by hydropower plant. So you can see a setup of a hydropower plant in which the reservoir has gates, and these gates are opened when a certain level of water is reached in the reservoir. Because of this, the water flows with great force and which runs the turbine, and then during that course of flow it meets a river. But the turbine which rotates is attached to a generator in a powerhouse and causes electricity to be produced, which is passed on into the power stations through the power line. So in order to produce tidal power electricity, high-rise dams are constructed on the rivers to obstruct the flow of water and thereby collect water in large reservoirs. The water level rises, and in this process the kinetic energy of flowing water gets transformed into potential energy, and the water from high level in the dam is carried through pipes to the turbines. At the bottom of the dam, since the water in the reservoir would be refilled each time in rain, hydropower is a renewable source of energy. We would not have to worry about hydroelectricity sources getting used up the way fossil fuels would get finished one day. This is the advantage of tidal power. But let us see what are the disadvantages. Construction of big dams have a certain problems associated with it. The dams can be constructed only at limited number of places, preferable in hilly terrains. Large area of agricultural land and human habitations are to be sacrificed as they get submerged, and large ecosystems are destroyed when submerged under water in dams. The vegetation which is submerged rot under anaerobic condition and give rise to large amount of methane, which is also a greenhouse gas. It creates problem of satisfactory rehabilitation of displaced people. Opposition of a dam of Tarai Dam on the river Ganga and Sardar Sarovar project on the river Narmada are due to such problems. So these are the disadvantages. Where advantages is it's a renewable source of energy, and the amount of energy or electricity produced is more as compared to that of thermal power, but has disadvantages which are listed below. Thank you.